Hello every pony, this is Alagorna, Prince of Aquilonia, and today I am going to be doing a review. In fact, I am going to be reviewing what is probably the most controversial issue of the IDW micro-series of comics. Yes, I'm talking about the Fluttershy issue. I just don't get why this issue is so hated. And it doesn't really amuse me that much. In fact, Voice of Reason, calling this the single worst thing MLP related ever, that kind of upsets me. But hey, it's a review, not a rant session. So let's try to be as objective and fair about this as possible. Because it's not perfect, folks. But we'll come to that here in a little bit. First off, let's start with a synopsis. Basically, Fluttershy enters an extreme art competition being held in Canterlot and judged by Princess Celestia, using her talents with knitting. Okay, maybe I should explain that a little bit more. Issue starts out with her and Angel walking around when she comes across a flyer for the competition. They bolt straight to the cottage, lock all the doors, close all the windows tight, and go to Fluttershy's basement, which she has retitled her Chamber of Extreme Knitting, where she makes sculptures out of knitting. And yes, I guess in Equestria they do have structurally sound yarn that's able to support its own weight enough to serve as a sculptural element. Don't ask me how that works, it just does. Let's roll with it. We cut to after Fluttershy going back and forth on if she should enter or not, with Angel trying to convince her to just do it. She finally does decide to enter, and everything seems to be going well, even though she's in disguise because this is Fluttershy. But, like I said, everything seems to be going well at first, until a modern art critic pony named Praiser Pan comes in with Fancy Pants, another unnamed high society pony, Fancy Pants' fiance? Let's just say that's his fiance. And Rarity. And basically starts walking around and dismissing everybody, every pony's contest entries as basically being either collections, garbage constructions, or, as he does when he gets to Fluttershy's, dismissing it as a simple piece of craft work. Which, of course, this makes Fluttershy upset, but she does, to her credit, try to stand up to him and give a perfectly good statement of artist intent, which he quickly dismisses by asking her, well, who the hell are you, and how the fuck do you think you know enough about this to make any kind of learned statement like that? Which causes Fluttershy to retreat into meek mode and start basically questioning why she even did this. Well, Rarity picks up on what's going on, realizes it's Fluttershy, and rips her costume off, and starts heaping tons of praise on her to try to boost her morale back up. Crowd of other ponies gathers around and starts commenting, And from the world of word balloons going on in the shot, it seems like about a 60-40 split of people genuinely loving Fluttershy's creation, which I should point out is basically an image of herself bursting forth into song surrounded by butterflies, and those that are like, I don't get it, it's not for me, blah blah blah. Well, of course, Rarity, for all her efforts, isn't really helping. And Fluttershy is, of course, only hearing the negative comments and can't seem to realize that there is actual praise going on for her. So she enters Flutter Rage mode, picks up a turnstile, and threatens to destroy her piece. But she stops herself, thinks about it for a second, and then turns to Praiser and says that basically, no, she won't do that because it's something she made, it's something that expresses something deep inside of her, and it's something that she actually likes. So why should she feel ashamed about it? Enter Princess Celestia, who gives her praise, which causes Praiser Pan to shut the fuck up and start kissing some ass. And then, of course, the other members of the main six come in and lift Fluttershy up as their hero, and Princess Celestia awards her first place. See, to me, that doesn't seem like that bad of a story. But to everyone else, it seems to be terrible. Well, everyone else except Digi. Digi actually, I wouldn't say in his review he sounded like he really liked it, but he was fair to it. Everyone else, though, just seems to hate it, and I can't figure out why. Mr. Enter does have one valid point, that does hold this back significantly, and that's with Praiser himself. He's basically set up to be a straw man. And that seems to be the big criticism, is how fair is this story to him? Well, we could say it's not fair at all, but he's a modern art critic. He's a structuralist critic. And while I love structuralist / formalist art, because I like the idea of experimentation with the actual process of art itself, structuralist criticism is a bunch of shallow, empty bullshit. Maybe I should explain this real quick. Okay, structuralism is basically the idea of judging something based on how it's made and how the parts relate to each other and to the piece as a whole. You see why this is problematic, don't you? The entire point of structuralism is to focus on art as art. But that means that there's no other way of interpretation. There's no social criticism. There's no psychological depth. It's just judging things based on their surface. There's no depth. There's no meaning. There's no nothing to it. Which means the only way a structuralist critic can feel validated is by being a fucking asshole. That's it. They have to be a pretentious prick to make themselves feel good because their chosen line of profession is empty inside. But That said, I actually tend to let all of that slide because there are other problems with it that hold it back beyond just the praiser's characterization. I like the story. I enjoy the story. But it's not a great story. It's trite. It's predictable. You've seen this before. The art's pretty, and I like Barbara Kessel as a writer, and always have, because you gotta remember, she gave us the last Batgirl story, which was Barbara Gordon's damn good send-off prior to the Killing Joke, which also established the skills that she would later use when Ostrander reintroduced her in Suicide Squad as Oracle. So for that alone, if that were the only story she ever wrote, she would be one of the top female comic book creators in my eyes. But she's also done a hell of a lot more work than that, which is well worth tracking down. But that said, this is one of her weaker stories because it is so predictable. You know what's going on here basically as soon as it happens, which is the oftentimes criticism of pretty much anything Fluttershy related. But here it seems to suffer more for some reason, and I don't know why. And the other thing that pisses me off is Rarity is basically here to do nothing but kiss Fluttershy's ass to try to make her feel better. That's not how you use her in this story. The proper way to use her in this story is to provide an alternate criticism from an artist's perspective. Praiser is there to give a criticism from a critic's perspective, but Rarity as an artist should offer an alternative critique. She should be able to sit there, use her discerning eye and her own natural abilities to examine the piece and then see what worked and what didn't, and give Fluttershy the advice to fix what didn't work and to expand on what did. She'd also be able to give her a criticism on if the piece itself conveyed what Fluttershy as the artist wanted it to convey, and then to offer ways that the viewer, the audience, might interpret it. Because remember, we are not in a modernist age anymore. We are in a postmodernist age, where the idea of the audience as an active participant in the creation of art is considered more valuable than just about anything. Because you also got to remember, this is also the era of Baudrillard saying that reality is dead because we can simulate reality to a point of such a refinement that it becomes indistinguishable from the actual world around us, and the only pretty much valid interpretation of anything is how we see things through our own subjective lens, since objective truth is a completely gone, destroyed, useless concept. I should do a video about postmodernist theory at some point in comparison to modernist theory. I'm gonna have to write that down when this is done. Anyways, if I had to sum up the issues with this book, I actually like it, but it's not great. I'd give it probably a 2.5 out of 5.